director of the Organization for Policy Research and Development Studies, which is an independent research institute based in Kabul in Afghanistan. Mariam, good to have you on the show. As we watch the tragedy unfolding in Afghanistan, there are some analysts out there that are of the position that, this was just a fantasy with the U.S. there to maintain peace, especially with such a limited troop presence, especially in the latter years. Was Afghanistan lost a while back?
I don't think that Afghanistan was lost a while back, but certainly in the last 3 years, and particularly as the peace process started to gain momentum with Ambassador Khalilzad and the U.S. involvement in that process, there were grave concerns, but there were also hope that potentially a political settlement or a political solution could be found to the conflict that had been waging in Afghanistan for 2 decades. However, what we saw at the end of the day was a failure of that process. And a failure of that process for many reasons. One in particular, I would add, because of the constant systematic sidelining of the voices of Afghan society in that process. And I think that in the latter years, particularly in the last 6 months, 9 months, there were concerns that what was unfolding, in addition to the announcement of the unconditional withdrawal of U.S. and NATO forces, that perhaps we may be looking towards dire times. And now we are in those times.
Okay. One of the things your organization concentrates on is the commitment to strengthening democratic ideas as well as values. How do you think these values will hold up under the regime of the Taliban?
Well, at this particular moment, we don't have any clarity on the type of governance structure that the Taliban leadership is proposing. This hasn't been clear in the past either. So, what we're going to see now, and what we're anticipating to see now, is more clarity from the Taliban leadership on this type of structures that they'll be bringing about. But what we have heard is them consistently repeating that the government would be an inclusive government and that it would be one built on consensus. So we're watching to see if that would take place. And so I would say at this particular point in time that we have to be careful to not impose one system of governance upon another. It's clear the Taliban have won this war, but now it's time for them to govern. And so in order to do that, we want to see if they will create those spaces for those discussions to take place among all sectors of Afghan society, taking into value the multifaceted aspects of Afghan society, to develop a structure that can bring together the experiences of Afghans under 2 decades of an Islamic republic with democratic structures, with the Islamic Emirate that they are now proposing. And so we have to wait and watch whether those commitments by the Taliban on ensuring that a consensus and views of all Afghans are taking into consideration within this is going to happen or not. So we will. It's very difficult to say at this particular moment because we don't have much clarity on their governance structures that they're proposing.
Okay. What do you think this means for the world in terms of the Taliban ruling Afghanistan? And if you could touch upon sort of maybe a looming refugee crisis and perhaps, the jihadism over democracy. I know they're very complex issues, but especially the refugee situation is one that we should keep an eye on out for.
Yes, of course. I mean, you've been seeing the images of Afghans flooding towards the airport, being considered now as the uh, Kabul moment. But I think that what we're seeing happen in Afghanistan is there's a public perception of fear and frustration, a fear and frustration which is driving them towards a movement to escape. But I would say that the discussion over whether this is a win over the situation of whether it's jihadism versus state building or peace building, winning over that. I think that for now we have to wait and see how this will progress from this moment forward.
Okay, Mariam Safi, some great analysis there. Thank you very much for joining us. I do appreciate it.